My best friend of 12 years got my wife pregnant while I was on a work assignment up north. So I documented everything, ended my marriage, torched his reputation, and walked away from everyone who told me I was overreacting. They're still calling. I stopped picking up 3 months ago. I'm Neil, 34. I work as a structural engineer for a mid-size firm out of Calgary. Not glamorous, but the kind of job that means something. Bridges, overpasses, the underbelly of infrastructure that holds a city together. My wife, my ex-wife now, was a physiotherapist with her own clinic in Bridgeland. We met at a mutual friend's housewarming in Kensington. Argued about whether the host's IKEA bookshelf could hold the weight of his actual book collection, and she gave me her number because, she said, I was the only person at the party who made her think. That was 9 years ago. We got married 6 years later. Bought a semi-detached off 10th Street. Had a daughter who just turned 4 and thinks the word engineer means the guy who drives the train. My best friend. I'll call him my best friend because that's what he was for 12 years. Even if the title makes me sick now. Worked in commercial real estate downtown. We met in first-year university at U of C, shared a terrible apartment in Ramsey for 2 years, were each other's references, emergency contacts, the whole thing. He was a groomsman at my wedding. He held my daughter the day she was born. For the last 8 months, he was sleeping with my wife. I want to be clear about something, before I go further. I am not writing this to get sympathy. I am writing this because I spent a long time convinced I was losing my mind, and I need to put it somewhere outside my own head. So here it is. The first thing I noticed was her sleep schedule. My wife had always been a light sleeper. The kind of person who woke up if the heat clicked on. Starting around last September, she was sleeping like she was made of stone. 11, 12 hours on weekends. I thought it was burnout. Her clinic had taken on 3 new physios, and she was managing the operational side of things almost entirely alone. I made excuses for her, the way you do when you love someone and you don't want to see what's in front of you. Then, there was her phone. She had never been secretive about it before. We weren't those couples who checked each other's messages. There was no need, no history of anything that would make either of us want to. But sometime in the fall she started keeping it face down on the counter, bringing it into the bathroom. Getting tense if I happened to glance at the screen when she was texting. Once I asked who she was talking to at 11 at night. And she said a client, with a chronic pain flare-up, which was plausible enough that I let it go. My best friend started coming around more. Not suspiciously more. Just slightly more than usual. Dropping by on a Tuesday to watch the game. Offering to pick up my daughter from daycare. When my wife was stuck at the clinic. Helping me move a shelving unit in the basement one Saturday. While my wife was supposedly at a continuing education seminar in Red Deer. These are all things a good friend does. I know that now. I also know now what he was doing on the days he wasn't helping me. I got assigned to a 12-week site rotation in Fort McMurray in January. Big infrastructure project, municipal contract. The kind of thing that puts a stamp on your career if you execute it cleanly. I was flying back to Calgary every second weekend. My wife understood. We had talked about this project for months, budgeted around it, arranged for her mother to come stay for a few weeks to help with our daughter. Everything was planned. Week 7, came home a day early. I don't even have a dramatic reason. My site supervisor moved up. The Thursday debrief to Wednesday. Flights were fine. I texted my wife that I'd be in by 8 o'clock that evening and she replied with a heart. I landed at YYC, grabbed my truck from the long-term lot, stopped for gas, and drove home. The lights were on when I pulled up. Her car was in the driveway, and parked behind it, blocking the lane, was a car I recognized immediately. Dark gray, Alberta plates. I had sat in that car probably 300 times over 12 years. I sat in my truck in the alley for about 2 minutes. My brain was doing that thing where it keeps offering you alternative explanations. Maybe there's a problem at the house. Maybe the furnace. Maybe something with our daughter. I got out of the truck and went in through the back door. My daughter was asleep upstairs. I know this because I checked before anything else. I stood in her doorway for a second and watched her breathe. Then I came back downstairs. They were in the kitchen. My wife had her back to me and didn't hear me come in. My best friend saw me first. His face did something I had never seen a face do before. Everything just stopped. My wife turned around. I didn't yell. I'm not sure why. I thought I would. In any version of this scenario I'd ever imagined. But I just stood in my own kitchen, holding my keys, and looked at them both. Neither of them said anything. The silence probably lasted 4 seconds. It felt like standing at the edge of something I couldn't climb back up from. I said, "Get out of my house." He left. He actually grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair and walked past me and left. My wife started crying immediately. The real, ugly kind, not performance. She tried to say my name and I told her to stop. I told her I needed 10 minutes and I went upstairs. Sat on the bathroom floor and did not make a sound. Here is what I want people to understand. In that 10 minutes I made a decision. Not about the marriage. That was already made for me. About how I was going to handle what came next. Because I am an engineer. I build things that have to hold up under load. And I know that the structure matters as much as the materials. You do not swing blindly. You plan your load-bearing points first. I came back downstairs. My wife was sitting at the kitchen table. I sat across from her and I said, I need to know how long. She told me 8 months. She told me it started in June, around the time I was doing preliminary site assessments, and working 18-hour days. She told me she hadn't planned it. She told me she loved me, and that she hadn't known how to stop, and that she was sorry. She said a lot of things. I let her say them. Said, I'm going to need you to leave for tonight. I'll stay with Mara. Mara's my daughter. I was not leaving my daughter. My wife went upstairs and packed a bag and left. That night I made Mara her favorite. Grilled cheese with the crusts cut off. Sat with her while she watched her show, put her to bed, and then opened my laptop at the kitchen table. I am good at research. It's part of the job. You pull every document, you verify every assumption. You build the picture from the facts up rather than from the feeling down. So, that's what I did. First I went through our joint credit card statements going back 9 months. The statements were in our shared financial folder online. We'd set it up years ago for tax purposes, and I had never had a reason to look closely at individual charges before I did now. August, a hotel charge in Canmore. $200 midweek. My wife had told me she went for a solo hiking weekend. I remember this specifically because I thought it was good for her, thought she needed the space. September, another hotel, this one in Banff. $284. A Friday night. I was in Edmonton for work. October. 3 dinner charges at a restaurant, each one in the $160 range. Not a place you go alone. November, a spa in Inglewood. A couple's package. $320. I photographed every statement. Then I went through our shared cloud backup. We used the same account for household documents. Renovation quotes, appliance warranties, our daughter's medical records. Buried in a folder she'd named Clinic Admin. Was a second folder I had never opened because I had no reason to. Inside it were photographs, 112 of them. Dated, geotagged. I closed the laptop. Sat with it for a moment. Then I reopened it and screen recorded myself scrolling through everything. The statements, the folder, the photos. Uploaded the recordings to my personal cloud account, not the shared one. Emailed copies to my work address and to a personal account she didn't know about. Then I went to bed. I needed to sleep. I had a plan to build. In the morning, I called in remote for my site check-in, dealt with 2 hours of project work, and then called a family lawyer I found through the Calgary Bar Association referral service. Explained the situation. She told me to come in Thursday, which was in 2 days, and to bring everything I had. I also called my wife. I told her she could come home to see Mara, that I would be civil, that we would figure out a schedule. I did not tell her about the documents. I did not tell her about the lawyer. I was calm. She cried again. She said she wanted to fix this. We'll talk, I said. Give me a few days. What I actually needed those days for was to build the paper trail so airtight that there would be no version of events where she could reframe what had happened. I also needed to deal with my best friend. He called me twice that Thursday while I was at the lawyer's office. I declined both. He texted, I know you don't want to hear from me. I'm sorry. I don't know what else to say. I screenshotted it and kept going. Friday evening my wife's mother had Mara for dinner. My wife came over to talk. We sat in the living room. I let her go first. She told me she knew it was wrong. She told me she had ended it the week before. Apparently the pregnancy scare she'd had in December, which she'd mentioned to me at the time as a late cycle, had panicked her enough to pull back. She told me she still loved me. She told me she wanted to try counseling. She was measured, prepared. She had clearly thought about what she was going to say. When she finished, I put the printed credit card statements on the coffee table. Then the screenshots from the shared cloud. Then the lawyer's card. She didn't say anything for about 30 seconds. You were already planning this, she said. You gave me 8 months of planning time, I said. I told her I was filing for divorce on grounds of adultery. I told her I had already moved half of our joint savings into my personal account. $22,000, which was my legal right as a joint account holder. I told her I had retained counsel, and that she should do the same. She cried. She asked about Mara. I told her Mara would be fine. Because I was going to make sure of that. And that the custody arrangement would be handled through our lawyers, with the child's best interest as the only priority. Then I told her about the photos. Her face went pale. She hadn't known I'd found that folder. She didn't know what I had done with them. I hadn't posted them anywhere. I want to be clear about that. The photos stayed between me, my lawyer, and eventually the mediator. I'm not in the business of burning someone's life down publicly when a 4-year-old is going to Google her mother's name someday. But I let my wife know they existed and what they contained. That was enough. What I did post was a message to our shared social group. We had a group text, 8 people, the core of the friend group we'd built together over the last decade. I sent one message. I came home early from Fort Mac on Wednesday and found them together. 8 months. I'm done. I won't be in contact for a while. No photos, no details. Just the fact, delivered plainly, to people who I knew would fill in the rest. My best friend had already texted most of them, trying to get ahead of the story. I know this because two of them told me. He had framed it as, things were already broken between Neil and his wife. As though he was a symptom rather than a cause. 3 people in that group had accepted his explanation. 3 of them stopped talking to me without reaching out first. I noted who they were and moved on. 2 people in that group showed up at my door. One of them brought food. That's how you find out who your people actually are. My best friend wasn't done. He emailed me 2 weeks later. A long email, 3 paragraphs, talking about how our friendship meant everything to him, and how he had made a terrible mistake, and how he hoped someday I might be open to hearing him out. He used the phrase "fell into it" twice. I forwarded the email to my lawyer for the file and did not respond. He worked in commercial real estate, and he had built a lot of his client base through referrals, several of which had come from me, from colleagues I had connected him with over the years. I made some calls. Not to spread the story, just to let people I genuinely cared about know that I would no longer be in a position to recommend him professionally. And why, adults can make their own decisions. 2 clients pulled back from deals they were in with him. That was their choice, not mine. I just provided the information. His business partner, a woman I had met several times at various events, sent me a message about 6 weeks after everything happened. She had decided to restructure their arrangement. She didn't elaborate. She didn't need to. The divorce took 7 months. In Alberta, the standard grounds require either 1 year of separation or proof of adultery. With the documentation I had, we didn't need the year. My lawyer was good. So was the process, honestly. Not easy, but fair. We agreed on primary residence for Mara with me, with my wife having parenting time every second weekend and Tuesday evenings, expanding as we both adjusted. My wife didn't contest it. I think she knew that contesting would have meant putting the photos and statements into the court record. And she wasn't willing to do that. I wasn't eager for it either. The house I kept, I bought out her equity. It needed work anyway, and I spent 3 weeks that summer redoing the basement with my brother-in-law, my sister's husband, who had quietly been one of the 2 people who showed up with food, and it felt like the right kind of physical project, something to rebuild with your hands when everything else is too abstract to touch. My wife is living in a condo in Marda Loop now. She sees Mara on the schedule we agreed on. Mara is adjusting. Kids adapt in ways that are both reassuring and quietly heartbreaking to watch. She asked me last month why Mummy lives in a different house. I told her that sometimes grown-ups need their own spaces, and that both of us love her exactly the same as always. She seemed to accept that. She's 4. She's still mostly interested in her books and her toy kitchen and a particular stuffed elephant, named Biscotti, who has been on every overnight since she was born. My best friend moved to Vancouver about 4 months after everything happened. I heard this from my sister, who heard it from someone peripherally connected. He is apparently working with a different firm now. I have not looked him up. I have no interest in knowing more than that. My mother called me 2 weeks after the initial news broke in our family circle. She wanted me to consider whether there was any path forward with my wife. I told her the path forward was the one I was already walking, and that I appreciated her concern but that this was a closed subject. She didn't bring it up again. My mother is practical. I've always respected that about her. My wife's family has been harder to navigate. Her parents were devastated, not at me, but for me, which was unexpected, and which I genuinely appreciated. Her mother, who had helped with Mara during the Fort Mac rotation, sent me a card in March. Handwritten. She told me she was sorry, that she had no words, that she hoped I knew she was still on my side. I put the card in a drawer. I've taken it out a couple of times. Some things you just hold on to. The person who surprised me most was my own best friend's older sister. I had known her peripherally for years. A cardiologist, lived in Hamilton. She texted me out of nowhere one Sunday morning, 3 months after everything happened. She said she had heard what her brother had done, and that she wanted me to know she was sorry, and that she had told him exactly what she thought of him, and that the friendship we had was real even if he hadn't acted like it. I sat with that message for a long time. I still don't know what to make of it, but I replied and thanked her, and we've exchanged a few messages since. Strange how things collapse and what's left standing. There is something I want to say about my daughter, and I want to say it carefully, because she will be a person who can read someday. She is the best thing I have built, not in the way people say that about their kids when they're trying to sound loving. I mean it literally. She is a structure that holds up. She is funny and curious and obstinate in exactly the right measure. She is going to be fine. Both of her parents love her genuinely, and are going to have to find a way to be decent to each other at school events and birthday parties, and eventually graduation ceremonies. And we will do that. Because she is the only reason that matters. I did not handle everything in this story perfectly. I want to say that plainly. I moved the money fast, maybe faster than I needed to. I made some of the calls I made with a harder edge, than was strictly necessary. I was not generous with my wife in the immediate aftermath, and I don't know if I should have been. When I think about the 2 months between finding them in my kitchen and the divorce being filed, I mostly remember running on controlled fury and very little sleep. And some of my decisions from that period reflect that. But I also did not roll over. I did not perform forgiveness. I did not feel. I did not stay in a situation that was slowly making me into someone I didn't recognize. And I did not let someone else write the ending to my own story. It has been 11 months. I am still in the house on 10th Street, which I've mostly fixed up now. I got promoted to project lead on a new municipal contract, the kind of project I'll be telling my daughter about when she's old enough to understand what her dad actually does. I have been on 3 dates, none of them consequential, all of them fine. I have been running again, which I stopped doing for most of my marriage, and only now realize how much I missed. I have a small, tight group of people I trust, which is smaller and tighter than it used to be, and is better for it. My best friend has not reached out again. My wife texts me occasionally about Mara's schedule, or a doctor's appointment or something practical, and I respond the same day and keep it brief. This is what co-parenting looks like. It is not warm, but it is functional, and that is what I aimed for. Last week I took Mara to the Science Center downtown. She stood in front of the physics exhibit, the one with the marble tracks and the pulleys, and spent 11 minutes trying to figure out on her own why the heavy ball moved faster. Did not ask me for help. Just watched, adjusted, tried again. When she finally got it, she turned around with this expression that was so completely unself-conscious in its pride that I had to look away for a second. I have no idea whether she gets that from me or from her mother. Probably both. Probably neither. Maybe that's just who she is. Some things you lose you were better off losing. Some people show you exactly who they are when the situation calls for it, and the only reasonable response is to believe them. And some structures, the ones you build yourself, turn out to be stronger than the ones you inherited. I didn't know that 11 months ago. I know it now.